I never believed in the supernatural until that night under the harvest moon. My friends and I had decided to camp in the remote woods to witness the rare lunar event, a once-in-a-lifetime blood moon that painted the sky with an eerie crimson glow. As darkness enveloped the forest, we gathered around the campfire, laughter and stories filling the air. Suddenly, an unnatural silence fell. The nocturnal sounds ceased, leaving only the crackling of the fire. "Did you guys hear that?" Lisa whispered. A distant chant echoed through the trees, a haunting melody that sent chills down my spine. Curiosity got the better of us. Grabbing our flashlights, we ventured toward the source of the sound. The woods seemed to close in around us, shadows stretching unnaturally long under the red moonlight. We emerged into a clearing where hooded figures encircled a massive stone altar etched with cryptic symbols. They didn't notice us at first, engrossed in their ritual. One by one, they raised their hands to the sky, chanting in a language that sounded ancient and forbidden. A pulsating energy filled the air, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. Then, the leader looked directly at us, his eyes glowing a sinister shade of red. "Intruders," he hissed. The cultists turned in unison, their faces hidden but their intent unmistakable. Panic surged through me. "We need to get out of here now," I shouted. We tore back through the forest, branches whipping against our faces. Behind us the chants grew louder, more aggressive. The ground trembled, and an otherworldly howl pierced the night. I glanced over my shoulder to see shadowy forms emerging from the darkness, twisted creatures that defied all reason. Back at our campsite, chaos greeted us. Our tents were shredded, and belongings were strewn everywhere. The fire had been extinguished, leaving us in near total darkness. "To the car," Mike yelled. We scrambled inside and I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The engine roared to life, and we sped down the narrow dirt road, but the horrors pursued us, shapes flickering at the edge of the headlights. The road seemed endless, the forest a labyrinth trapping us in a nightmare. "What are those things?" Sarah cried. Just when despair threatened to consume us, we burst out onto the main road. The creatures halted at the tree line, unable or unwilling to leave the forest. The harvest moon began to wane, its crimson hue fading. Relief washed over me as we put distance between us and that accursed place. We never spoke of that night again. But sometimes when the moon is full, I hear echoes of that haunting chant and wonder what might have happened if we hadn't escaped. Deep down, I fear that the ritual was completed and that the door to another realm was left open. I had always sought solitude in nature, so when I heard about the untouched lake hidden deep within the forest, I couldn't resist. Locals called it the Silent Lake, a place where time stood still. They warned me, but I dismissed their superstitions as mere folklore. Arriving just before dusk, I was captivated by its beauty. The water was like glass, reflecting the fiery hues of the sunset. But something was off. There were no sounds, no birds chirping, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive silence that pressed against my ears. Setting up camp along the shore, I tried to shake off the unease. As night fell, the full moon cast an eerie glow over the lake. I sat by the campfire, its crackling the only break in the silence. Suddenly, ripples formed on the water's surface. I glanced up, expecting to see a fish or perhaps a fallen branch, but the lake remained undisturbed. Then, faint whispers began to surround me. At first I thought it was the wind, but there was no breeze. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, though I couldn't make out the words. A chill ran down my spine. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the stillness. Mist started to rise from the lake, twisting and turning into vague human shapes. Pale faces with hollow eyes stared back at me. My heart pounded as I realized these were not living beings. They were spirits, those who had drowned, trapped beneath the surface. Panic set in. I stumbled back, tripping over a root and falling hard. The whispers turned into mournful wails. The spectral figures glided toward me across the water. "Join us," they seemed to chant. Scrambling to my feet, I grabbed my flashlight and bolted into the woods. The beam flickered as I weaved between the trees, the wails echoing behind me. The forest, once silent, was now alive with sinister sounds. Branches snapping, leaves rustling without wind. No matter how far I ran, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. The terrain grew unfamiliar, and I realized I was lost. My breath came in ragged gasps. In the distance, I saw a faint glow, a lantern perhaps. Desperate, I moved toward it. Emerging into a small clearing, I found an old, weathered sign. Beware the silent lake. Souls unrest seek company. The lantern light flickered out, plunging me into darkness. The whispers returned, now all around me. Shadows moved at the edge of my vision. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted into the night. A voice, barely more than a sigh, answered, "Remember us." Fumbling with my backpack, I pulled out my camera. Maybe acknowledging them would appease their unrest. I snapped a photo toward the lake, the flash momentarily illuminating the spectral figures. For a moment, the whispers ceased. The shadows receded. The oppressive weight lifted from the air. Cautiously, I made my way back to the campsite. Dawn was breaking, the first rays of sunlight piercing through the trees. The lake looked serene, almost inviting, but I knew better. Quickly packing up, I left without looking back. To this day, I can't shake the memory of those haunting eyes or the chilling silence of that place. I've learned that some spots in nature are untouched for a reason, and sometimes the past refuses to stay buried. Somewhere out there, under the still waters of the silent lake, restless souls linger, waiting for someone to remember them or to join them. I should have known better than to follow an old compass found in the woods. It was Jake who spotted it, half buried under a tangle of roots. The brass casing was tarnished and the glass cracked, but the needle spun with uncanny precision. "Check this out," Jake exclaimed, wiping dirt off the face. "Still works." Sarah peered over his shoulder. "Probably points to treasure," she joked. "Or trouble," I muttered. But curiosity got the better of us. The compass didn't point north. Instead, the needle seemed to pull toward an unseen destination. "Let's see where it leads," Jake suggested. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We veered off the marked trail, the forest thickening around us. The trees grew taller, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. An uneasy silence settled in. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the crunch of our footsteps. "Anyone else feels like we're being watched?" Sarah whispered. I nodded. "Maybe we should head back." "We've come this far," Jake insisted. "Just a little further." The compass guided us to a clearing where the remains of an old stone structure stood. Moss-covered and crumbling, it emanated a cold that seeped into my bones. "What is this place?" I asked. Jake stepped forward. "Looks ancient. Maybe we shouldn't." Before he could finish, the ground beneath us gave way. We tumbled into a dark cavern, landing on damp soil. Groaning, I looked up to see the hole sealing itself, roots intertwining until no light penetrated. Panic surged through me. "This can't be happening." Sarah's flashlight flickered on, revealing walls etched with cryptic symbols. The air was thick with the scent of earth and something else, something metallic. "Do you hear that?" Jake's voice shook. A distant whisper echoed, growing louder, more insistent. Shadows began to move along the walls, detaching themselves and inching closer. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted down a narrow passage, the whispers morphing into guttural chants. The compass needle spun wildly in Jake's hand, then snapped, the pieces falling to the ground. "Which way now?" Sarah cried. "Just keep moving," I urged. The tunnel opened into another chamber, this one lit by a ghostly glow emanating from a pool of water at its center. Figures emerged from the pool, translucent, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce our very souls. "Join us," they murmured in unison. We backed away slowly. "There's gotta be another exit," I whispered. Spotting a sliver of light behind a rock formation, I pointed. There! We dashed toward it, the apparitions reaching out with elongated fingers. Sarah stumbled, and I grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. With a final push, we squeezed through the gap and emerged into the forest, gasping for air. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that danced menacingly. "We need to get back to the campsite," Jake said, his bravado gone. We didn't stop until we reached our tents. Frantically packing up, we could still hear faint whispers carried on the wind. As we drove away, I glanced back to see the forest engulfed in darkness, the path we had taken now hidden. The compass was gone, but the sense of dread remained. Weeks later, nightmares still haunt me. Visions of those hollow eyes and the chilling whispers. Sometimes when I'm alone, I feel that pull again, as if the cursed compass is calling me back. I try to ignore it, but deep down, I fear that our escape was only temporary, and that some paths, once taken, never truly let you go.